About a year and a half ago, I bought a small craftsman-style house in a quiet lakeside village. It wasn't perfect, it needed some updates, but it was mine, and after years of noisy apartment living, it felt like a dream come true. The place had charm. Sloped roof, old red brick chimney, creaky hardwood floors. It had been owned by a man named George Holbrook, a retired train conductor, who'd lived there alone for over 40 years before moving into assisted living. From the start, I fell in love with the house. It had personality. The kind of personality that comes with a long history and a few secrets. For the first couple months, I stayed busy painting, fixing fixtures, and unpacking. I spent a lot of time in the upstairs bedroom, the biggest one, with a slanted ceiling and a single narrow window that overlooked the backyard. By mid-September, I had gathered enough stuff I didn't need, old dishes, duplicate tools, random odds and ends, and decided to hold a little garage sale to get rid of it all. That Saturday morning was unusually warm. I set up folding tables along the driveway, arranged everything neatly, and sipped coffee while waiting for people to stop by. A few neighbors wandered over, made polite small talk, and bought a few things. It was quiet, slow, peaceful. That was when I saw her. She was older, probably in her late 70s, wearing a plain gray coat despite the heat, and walking slowly down the sidewalk with a cane. I'd never seen her before, and in a town this small, that meant something. She didn't glance at any of the tables, didn't ask about the sale. She walked right up to me and looked past me toward the house. "You're the new owner?" she asked, her voice hoarse but clear. "Yes," I said. "Just moved in a few months ago." She gave a slow nod, her eyes still fixed on the upper floor. "I used to come here often a long time ago. That house has its stories." Before I could say anything, she turned her head slightly and added, "If you ever start feeling strange at night, check under the window seat upstairs. They didn't find everything." My heart thudded just once, hard at her words. "Wait, what do you mean by that?" I asked, stepping forward. But she had already begun walking away, one slow step after another. I called out again, but she didn't turn back. She disappeared around the corner within seconds. I stood there for a while, trying to make sense of what she'd said. They didn't find everything? Who was they? And what was supposedly hidden? The rest of the day passed uneventfully, but I couldn't shake the woman's words. That night, I sat in bed upstairs, listening to the occasional creak from the old wood and thinking about the window seat she'd mentioned. It was built into the wall beneath the narrow upstairs window. I hadn't given it much thought before, just used it to stack a few blankets. Eventually, curiosity got the better of me. I grabbed a flashlight and went over. The wood felt solid, but there was a slight give when I pressed on the back panel. I gently pried at the seams with a flathead screwdriver. After a few tries, one panel shifted slightly and slid open with a soft crack. Behind it, nestled in dust and cobwebs, was a cloth pouch, dark blue, faded, and tied with a red ribbon that had mostly unraveled. I hesitated, my stomach tightening. Then I reached in and pulled it out. It was light, like it barely held anything at all. I opened the pouch and immediately stepped back. Inside were 3 items: a broken locket with no photo inside, a child's sock stiff with age, and a yellowed piece of paper with something scribbled in messy handwriting. I held it to the light and read the words aloud. She cried for hours. I couldn't take it anymore. That was all. I stood there, holding this strange bundle, feeling a growing weight settle in my chest. Who had written that? Who was she? And why hide these things? I didn't sleep much that night. My thoughts ran wild. Had something happened here? Something George never mentioned? The next morning, I called the local sheriff's office and explained what I'd found. They sent a deputy out to take a look. He examined the items carefully, took photos, and asked a few questions. Then he said, "Honestly, these are weird, but there's nothing illegal here. No signs of a crime. It could just be sentimental, or someone's way of processing something." I didn't buy it. I tracked down George Holbrook through the senior home's main line and asked if he'd ever heard about anything hidden in the house. His response was quick and strangely defensive. "I don't know what you're talking about. There's nothing in that house worth finding." Then he hung up. That night, I dreamed of footsteps echoing up the stairs, a faint child's cry coming from behind the walls. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart racing, and didn't go back to sleep. I tried talking to neighbors, showing them the items I'd found. No one recognized the woman I described. No one knew anything about the history of the house beyond George living there forever. Over time, I put the pouch away in a drawer, but I haven't forgotten. I still think about the way she said it. they didn't find everything. What else is in this house? What was hidden and why? I sometimes imagine tearing up every floorboard, pulling open every wall, trying to uncover what's left behind. But part of me is afraid, because maybe, just maybe, some things were never meant to be found. I've always liked photography. Nothing fancy, just something to play with on weekends. About a year ago, I decided to get a proper camera. My phone was fine, but I wanted to experiment more: portraits, nature, maybe even some night shots. I wasn't looking to drop hundreds of dollars, so I checked out a few local yard sales. Small town, lots of retirees. Good place to find hidden gems if you're patient. One Saturday morning, I stopped by this old brick house on Chestnut Drive. Brown shutters, crooked mailbox, and a hand-painted yard sale today sign. The front yard was scattered with tables, tools, boxes of books, and mismatched furniture. Toward the back of one table, half hidden under a pile of VHS tapes, I saw it, a black Canon DSLR. I picked it up. Dusty, a little scratched, but it felt solid. The guy running the sale was tall, maybe in his 60s, wearing a flannel shirt and a faded ball cap. When I asked about the camera, his face changed slightly. "That belonged to my nephew," he said, then paused. "Left it behind when he moved. You can have it for 30. I didn't ask questions. $30 was a steal. I paid in cash, thanked him, and walked back to my car feeling like I'd scored big. At home, I cleaned it up, charged the battery, and turned it on. The memory card was still in it. That's when things got strange. I sat on the couch scrolling through the photos. At first, they were ordinary: sunsets, parks, a few shots of city streets at night. Whoever took them had a decent eye. Then came a shift. The pictures grew darker, more voyeuristic. There were photos of houses, taken from across the street, through fences, even behind bushes. Then came closer shots. Living room windows, kitchen lights on, people inside unaware. A woman sitting alone at a dining table. A man brushing his teeth. One photo stopped me cold. A bedroom, light spilling through the blinds, a person asleep in bed. My stomach dropped. The bedspread looked familiar. I kept clicking. Another photo. That same bedroom, this time from a different angle. My pulse started to race. The lamp in the photo. The dresser. Even the poster on the wall. It was my room. I dropped the camera onto the couch like it had burned me. My breathing got shallow. I stood and walked slowly into my bedroom, heart thudding. Everything matched. The curtains, the lamp, the exact view from the street if someone was watching from a car. I felt sick. I hadn't owned the camera before. Someone else had taken those pictures of me. My mind scrambled. When were these taken? How long had someone been watching me sleep? I didn't waste a second. I grabbed the camera, got in my car, and drove straight to the police station. I asked to speak to a detective and explained everything. The officer was quiet, serious. He took the camera and promised to call me in a few days. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was Detective Mullins. "We've looked into the photos," he said. "They were taken roughly 18 months ago based on metadata. The camera belonged to a man named Craig Larkin." I didn't know the name. Mullins continued. "Larkin was a suspect in a Peeping Tom investigation 2 years ago. Charges were dropped. Not enough to stick. He left town shortly after. No forwarding address. Just gone." I felt a cold pit in my stomach. That man had been outside my window. Watching. Photographing. "The guy who sold it to me said it was his nephew's," I said. "Yeah," Mullins replied. "That checks out. But get this, his nephew was never officially questioned. Police couldn't find him when the case broke." I asked what would happen now. Mullins just said, "We'll try to track him down, but there's not much to go on. If anything changes, we'll be in touch." I changed my locks that afternoon. Bought blackout curtains. Installed motion lights. Even put a small camera facing my own driveway, just in case. But no matter what I did, that creeping feeling never left. The thought that someone was once outside, standing just feet from my bed, camera in hand, watching. And not just once. There were dozens of shots. From slightly different angles. Like he came back. Again and again. He was methodical. Patient. Waiting for the right shot. That's what haunts me the most. Nobody's seen Craig Larkin since he vanished. No online presence, no paper trail. It's like he disappeared. But someone had to take those pictures. Someone stood outside my window while I slept. And that someone still hasn't been found. Every time I close my curtains at night, I wonder if he's still out there. Maybe watching another house, another bed, another person who has no idea they're being watched. Or maybe he never left. Maybe he's waiting for the right night to return. After all, someone took the last photo on that camera, and I've never figured out how it was taken from inside my room. Back in late spring, my fiancée Amanda and I decided it was time to clear out the basement of our home in Rivertown, New Hampshire. Most of the clutter came from her late uncle, who had lived with us for a few years before passing away. He was a collector of everything: maps, nautical gear, weathered furniture, strange instruments. We agreed to host a weekend garage sale, thinking we'd make a little money and reclaim some space. It started like any other: folding tables filled with dusty boxes, rusted tools, vintage books, and curiosities from another time. Locals stopped by, most just browsing. Some haggled, a few made polite small talk. The sun was out, birds chirping. It felt like any other peaceful weekend. Around 11:30 a.m., a man arrived. Middle-aged, gaunt face, wiry build, and dressed like he had walked out of a different decade. His coat was heavy in wool, despite the heat, and his eyes never met ours. He wandered slowly past the tables without a word, until he spotted a small wooden box toward the back. Inside it was an antique brass compass. Amanda's uncle had said it came from a shipwreck off the coast decades ago. The man picked it up, turning it over gently, like it was something precious he hadn't seen in years. Amanda tried telling him what little we knew about it, but he cut her off with a quiet, "I'll take it." He pulled out a wad of bills, paid the full asking price, nodded once, and walked away down the street, never looking back. Amanda and I exchanged a glance. "Well, that was weird," she whispered. But we forgot about it by that evening. A week passed. Then, on a rainy Tuesday night, I came home from work and spotted something that didn't belong. A set of muddy boot prints on our back porch, just below the kitchen window. I called Amanda over. She frowned, then brushed it off as maybe the mailman or a delivery guy. But something about the spacing of those prints, they were too deliberate. Like someone had been standing still, just watching. That same night, Amanda swore she saw a figure near the tree line behind our yard, right before the porch light flickered and went out. I searched with a flashlight, but found nothing but wet grass. We tried to move on, but things didn't feel right anymore. We both started double-checking locks, pulling curtains shut tightly, and leaving lights on all night. Then, a few days later, Amanda noticed something strange on her phone. Her photos had been moved into new folders. She hadn't done it. In one of them was a recent picture of our house. The image had been taken from a distance, zoomed in through a window on the second floor. The angle was from behind our shed, and it was definitely not from our phones. My heart sank. The timestamp on the photo was 2:12 a.m., 2 nights ago. That's when we called the police. An officer came out, took our statement, walked the perimeter, and left after finding no evidence of trespassing. "Could be a prank," he said with a shrug. "Or someone casing the place. Keep your doors locked." That was it. The next night, Amanda woke me up around 3 a.m., whispering frantically that she heard tapping on the window in our upstairs hallway. I jumped up, grabbed a bat from under the bed, and crept down the hall. At the far end, beyond the laundry room, was a narrow window that overlooked our driveway. There, barely visible in the dark, was a silhouette. Motionless. Staring directly at the window, his face too shadowed to make out, but the shape of the coat was unmistakable. It was him. The man from the garage sale. The man with the compass. I flung the window open and shouted, but he didn't move. By the time I raced downstairs and out the front door, he was gone. No footsteps, no sound. That night, we didn't sleep. Amanda started digging through her uncle's old journals and found something we'd never read before. In one entry, he described how the compass had always pointed home, even when it shouldn't. He'd written that someone once followed him, asking about it, warning that it didn't belong to him. Another entry mentioned nightmares. A man standing outside his window. A man in a heavy coat. We didn't know if the entries were ramblings or something more, but by morning, we were both too shaken to stay. We packed a few bags and left for Amanda's sister's place across town. That afternoon, our neighbor called. She saw someone lurking near our back door again. He didn't try to break in, just stood there for nearly 10 minutes. Watching. A motion light finally spooked him, and he disappeared into the woods. The police checked again. Still nothing. A month later, we sold the house and moved out of state. We told ourselves it was just a coincidence, a creepy man obsessed with an old trinket. But sometimes, when I can't sleep, I think about what Amanda's uncle wrote. It always points home. And I wonder if, by giving him that compass, we didn't just sell him something. We gave him the way back to us.